What's going on, people? It's your boy Kelechi back with another episode of the Ramblin' Mind podcast. How are each and every single one of y'all doing today? I hope y'all have had a lovely day. I hope y'all are ready for the weekend. I hope y'all are excited. And I hope things are going well for you. I know in this time things are very, very dire, and I know things are just tough right now for a lot of people. The situation just seems to keep going, turning upside down every single day. And, it's just tough. It's a rough period we're in, a period of uncertainty. It's a period of volatility. It's a period of just loneliness to a degree, with everybody just kind of working from home and being by themselves in this time. And it's just, it's a very weird time frame and a very weird time period that we are in now, but don't lose hope. I guess that's the only thing that I can say is don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Just keep striving, keep working, do what you can do. For all my Christians out there, keep praying. Just keep on seeking the face of God. I know saying that right now, especially in this time period that we're in, is like, yeah, whatever, bro. Like, I don't want to hear it. But I mean, I'll be honest, like, you just got to. I mean, you have nothing else. I mean, you might as well, right? Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. I know this time period sucks. Like, it really sucks. But just stay strong. Stay strong. For all my Christians, even if you're not a Christian, God has not given up on you before, and he's not about to start giving up on you today. Hold on to him. Hold on to his word. Hold on to his truth. He will come for you. He will do what only he can do. I know it's hard to imagine it right now, being in the middle of this whole thing and in the middle of all the negativity and all the news broadcasts, and everything just seems to be happening every day. And it just seems like there is no end in sight, but just stay strong. Keep your faith up. Keep focusing on him. No matter what happens, keep your faith on him. Keep focusing on him. Don't lose sight on the one who can strengthen you, on the one who makes everything new. So just don't lose sight. Don't lose sight. Focus on him. Focus everything you have on him. Always look to him, for he will always be there for you. But anyway, moving on from that, we got a lot to talk about today. We got a bunch to talk about today. We got the unemployment numbers that we talked about on Tuesday's podcast, but we're going to dive into it this week and why the stock market didn't really react too much on that news. We also have the $2 trillion stimulus bill that was passed by Congress, or passed by the House, and also signed by the White House, and now it's official. What that means for you and all that good stuff. We're going to break it all down in this podcast today. And then we also have some other little interesting stories that I've been reading about, stories about Waffle House. I mentioned it a little bit on Tuesday, but we'll talk more about it today. Stories about rent being due, because it is the second of the month when you're listening to this. But when I'm recording this, the first of the month, which means rent is due, and how that is affecting everyone. But before we get into any of that, I want to start off with just showing y'all my portfolio on both my Robinhood, and I created an M1 Finance portfolio. But the bull, remember, everyone was super excited about how we're coming out of the bear market. We're not out of the bear market. The market is going to keep doing something called a W, which is where it goes down, then goes back up, then goes down again, and goes back up. And so, as you can see, we've been seeing that W happen over and over. We've seen the market go up, come down, go up, come down, go. It had a unbelievable run last week where markets just went all the way to all-time highs for a day. And then after that, starting out this week, it came down, and then it started off this week going up, and then yesterday it came down, and then it's just been down since then. So you can just see, like, as more and more information is being known, one thing you have to know about the stock market is the stock market, bad news is a lot more important than no news, which is why the number of unemployment didn't really shake the stock market last week. So uncertainty is the one thing that investors and economists hate the most. They just don't like not knowing. And that's one thing that has been happening is just, we just don't know how this is going to affect us. But now the image is being painted a little bit more. We're knowing how many people might lose their job. We're knowing how the economy is going to be, and how bad it's going to be. And we've also seen how the government is going to respond to that, and how well they're going to keep responding to this information, and how far they're willing to go for this kind of situation. But anyway, looking at my portfolio, you can see I started out at about $421. I'm about down all time. I'm down $7.16. And basically it's just been not a great time to be looking at your portfolio regularly, but it's still a great time to buy a lot of these good stocks. Disney, that was at 150 at one point, is all the way down to 95. That's a great dividend paying stocks. Microsoft is, as you guys know, I am bullish on Microsoft. Always will be bullish on Microsoft. It's another really good stock that's really, really cheap right now. And another one that's been super cheap recently. If you're not looking to do individual stock investments, a couple of ETFs that I'll recommend is SPY and SDY. These are two really, really good ETFs that will expose you to multiple parts of the industry, multiple different industries. And I think that if you're not looking to really dive into it and take control of your portfolio and actually like actively research companies or anything like that, just do an ETF, and it's a lot easier on you. Somebody else will be managing what companies are in the ETFs and those kind of things. But look at, like we talked about on Tuesday, research, do your research, know what you're buying, know what you're buying into. So there's some other companies on here that I would like to invest in, but I'm not that liquid right now, so I can't really invest like that. But that's basically my Robinhood portfolio. I'm still down. I expect to be down probably for another couple months before things start looking on the up and up. But that probably won't happen till probably beginning of next year. But anyway, the other one is M1 Finance. We talked about it a little bit in the past, talked about M1 Finance and how I prefer the look of M1 Finance when compared to Robinhood. And so I opened an M1 Finance account, and basically I only invested $100, but I love the way it breaks it down. It breaks it down into something called slices, where you have you dedicate how much of a percentage you want each slice to be. So as you can see, first of all, this was $100 that I started this account with, and I've already lost $6 with it. So that just tells you how volatile the market is right now. And so, at first, earlier today, this was at $101, and I was like, "Ooh, that's good. That's really good." And then before the day ended, the market all the information that's been released from all the news sources, and of course, all the information from different companies and how much they're letting people go and all that stuff. Of course, the market reacted and it came down. And so started out at about 101 today, and it's just come all the way down to 93. So it is what it is. I'm not really fretting that. It's still just the beginning of me trying to build this. As you can see, the name is Passive Income. Basically, every company that I bought in this investment account is basically dividend paying companies. Robinhood, on the other hand, has different companies that don't pay dividends. It's just companies that I like Under Armour, a Gamer, which is like a gamer focused ETF, Nokia, which Nokia is just all these companies, Fitbit, Ford just canceled their dividend, Uber. A lot of these companies do not pay dividends, but I'm okay with that. Square, they don't pay dividends, but it's companies that I'm interested in to seeing how they grow. Versus M1 Finance is strictly focused on dividend paying companies that will help me build some kind of passive income over time. My goal with this portfolio is to build a passive income with it. Try to make where this portfolio is not making even up to $1 because I just opened it. But over time, I'm hoping to get to the point where this portfolio can get me every month about $1,000. So that's going to take a long time. It takes a whole lot of money to get to that point, a whole lot of investment to be able to get to the point where your shares are giving you $1,000 every month, or you're getting paid $1,000 every month. But for right now, this is where I am. It's pretty basic, pretty bland, but so it is. But I just wanted to show y'all some of the companies that I'm choosing to invest in as far as this portfolio is concerned. So I have a consumer slice within my pie. And in that slice, you'll see some companies on here that I have been watching over time. So we got Coke, We have Disney, we have Walmart, Costco, Lowe's. These are some of the best dividend paying companies out there, especially when it comes to consumer products. I really, especially like for me, I'm very bullish on Disney, Costco, like because I really believe in their management styles of those two companies, especially. I know a whole lot more about Disney's management system and Costco's management, so I'm very bullish on them. Coke is just like a super long-term company that I just believe that no matter what happens, they'll always figure something out. And then from there, we have technology because I'm a tech head. So a lot of stuff in my portfolio is heavily weighted towards the technology sector. So we got Microsoft, Apple, and IBM. These three companies, well, mainly these two companies are ones that I'm very bullish on. IBM, I just think with their cloud computing services and their supercomputing services, they're going to be doing something really good. I may invest in Google. I may invest in Amazon in the future. I don't know yet. But for right now, these are the three companies that I have in my technology part of it. And then in real estate, I think I only have two in there. This is a mortgage real estate. And this is a corporate building real estate company. They basically own buildings that a lot of corporations use. So think about like buildings that Walmart might own. Walmart doesn't own the building. It's actually owned by these guys. And so these are really good, high dividend paying stocks. So by the way, REITs, which is basically real estates, are basically real estate investment trusts, are some of the highest dividend paying stocks that you can own. And I like them. So those are the two that I looked at and invested in. And then financial services, I think it's basically banks and Visa. So because everything we do is through banks. And then I have industrial. 3M is the only one in there for right now. I'll probably look at add in a few more later on. But the main thing is, one thing I wanted to do is I'm trying to keep all the companies in total. All these companies, there's about 20 companies or 19 companies that I'm completely invested in right here. Utilities are always going to be the backbone of my portfolios because they are dependable over time because we always need utilities. And then, of course, healthcare. Healthcare is a good industry. And I have J&J and P&G, which are the two biggest healthcare, not providers, but healthcare companies in the industry. But anyway, the main thing with my portfolio is total, I have about 19 companies. And I don't want to go over 20. So even if I want to add a company or something like that, I'm probably going to remove a company before adding another one. Just because I don't want to spend too much time looking at this stuff and researching this stuff and knowing all the ins and outs of different businesses. I want to do what Warren Buffett says is stay in my lane. Basically, what do I have the bandwidth for? What is the things that I am always paying attention to? What is the news that I'm always reading about that these companies are always in my line of sight? So that way, stuff that's in my periphery that I don't touch a lot, I don't have to get caught up with and then end up now looking at when a business is failing and not knowing about it until it's too late. And so that's just the idea of these. I want to keep it relatively always under 20 over time, but who knows what might happen in the future. But anyway, that's basically my portfolio as far as M1 is concerned and as far as Robinhood is concerned. As you see, Robinhood is a little bit bigger because I've been doing it for a little bit longer, since 2018, versus M1, which I just started literally this week. So we'll see how these two play out. I'll keep updating y'all on these portfolios and how they're doing over time, just to give y'all a look at the inside of like, look, investing is not always a positive thing, especially like after you just put in $100, your $100 just becomes $97. That can hurt a lot. So you got to have the stomach for this stuff. It takes some time, takes some getting used to. I've read all the time, but it's fine. I don't need the money right now. I'm not looking for immediate gratification. I'm looking way down the line. I'm looking 5-10 years down the line. I've said that multiple times, but that's the goal with my portfolio. But anyway, one of the things I wanted to do before we got into it, I don't know if we have that much time. It's already 15 minutes in, but I wanted to do a quick recap. And also I wanted to tell y'all about Morning Brew, which I read almost literally every day. And I get a lot of information from them. They have really, really good breakdown of some of the major news that's happening in the world. This is how I get a lot of my business information. I put a link down in the description. Also, by the way, there's a link in the description, or if you're listening to this on a podcast, in the show notes, on if you sign up for Robinhood and you didn't have Robinhood prior to this, you get a free stock. I get a free stock. Everybody likes free stocks. That's wonderful. And then also, if you sign up using the link for M1, you get $10 and I get $10, which is pretty cool. So, and also, if you want to sign up for Morning Brew as well, link is down in the show notes / description. Anyway, the thing I wanted to do was just go through some of the things that has happened over the last 90 days, because we are in a new quarter. So I just wanted to review where we've been and how things can change so quickly in 90 days. Remember at the beginning of this year when all we were focused on was the trade war between the US and China and how the US was trying to make a trade deal with China and all that stuff? Man, that feels so far away. Remember when we were talking about BlackRock and how they're now focusing on climate change? Those were good days. Those were really good days. And when Tesla was just exploding in February, those were really, really good days. And then all of a sudden March came up and it was like, oh, real life coming through. And a lot of stuff happened in March. So, the entire world shut down. We started living at home. Not just living at home, but working from home, doing everything from home, not trying to go anywhere anymore because of coronavirus. And so it completely changed everything. Where we're looking at the markets just flying high. All of a sudden we saw the steepest drop in the market of all time. We're seeing gas prices to be some of the lowest of all time. I know we've seen the highest. You know what? I'll just read exactly what they said. By mid-March, this is quoting Morning Brew, by mid-March, the private sector had mobilized into a wartime economy. Non-essential businesses were closing. 3.3 million Americans filed for unemployment in a week, and the government passed a record $2.2 trillion stimulus package. Just think about that. Like, all of this stuff just happened in a span of 90 days. 90 days where we were flying high, where everything was fine. It was all good just a week ago. Like, everything was good a week ago. Like, everything was good, but, real life hits. Real life hits real hard. But anyway, I just wanted to do a quick recap just to let y'all know where we are. And then speaking of that stimulus package, let's dive right into it. So the Senate finally approved the $2 trillion coronavirus stimulus package, as well as the House passed it and Donald Trump signed it in the House. And we'll just talk about some of the things that they talked about or they approved and what that means for you and your family and how this can either help you and how this affects you. And generally, it helps basically almost everybody. The Senate approved the largest economic stimulus package in recent memory, moving the estimated $2 trillion bill to the House as Congress seeks to give American families and businesses a financial shield against the ravages of the new coronavirus pandemic. It was passed 96-0. So one of the things that a senator said about the issue, and I'm going to title this podcast War Against Coronavirus, or Wars Declared on Coronavirus. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said, "A fight has arrived on our shores. We did not seek it. We did not want it, but now we are going to win it," which he was mentioning the fact that they just passed the bill and the fact that I'm now going to call this podcast War on Coronavirus. And so the way they're basically declaring war on it is by doing an economic stimulus package, basically giving money to the American public so they can actually thrive during this period in time. A couple of things to think about of how much has already been spent during this. Congress has already passed, or the Fed has already passed about a $6 trillion in total amount has been spent to keep the economy afloat during this pandemic. $4 trillion was spent directly on by the Federal Reserves, and we've talked about that multiple times. And then, of course, today we're going to be focusing on this $2 trillion that was spent on by the House itself, by the federal government. And so the first part of that is we have about $301 billion that goes directly to the American public. So a quote from the Wall Street Journal: "The legislation will provide one-time checks of about $1,200 to Americans with adjusted gross income up to $75,000 for individuals and $15,000 for married couples. Individuals and couples are eligible for an additional $500 per child," which I just found out that child per child means you have to be 16 years or younger, which is kind of annoying, to be honest, but at the same time, what can you do? The government rebates will be pared by $5 for each $100 of income over those threshold. In other words, like as you go higher and higher up, they're going to reduce $5 for every $100 that they're supposed to give you. So and that's going all the way up to about $99,000 for individuals and $146,500 for head of households with one child, and $198,000 for joint filers who don't have any children. So basically $1,200 if you make less than $75,000 or less than $150,000. However, if you make more than that and you make less than $100,000, just subtract $5 for every $100 that they were supposed to give you, and that'll tell you the total amount of money that might be coming into your pocket based on how much you make. So that's basically the $301 million that they are given. But they weren't stopped there. They're also expanding the unemployment benefits by spending about $250 billion to go into unemployment, which basically, for those who qualify for unemployment, especially right now, we just talked about 3.3 million people who just filed for unemployment. Those who filed for unemployment and qualify for unemployment will receive, on average, an expanded unemployment benefit of up to $600 per week for 4 months, plus whatever in-state benefits they may already be getting. Now, this was one of the reasons why the state, or why there was so much bickering and why this didn't get passed as quickly as possible, because Senator Lindsey Graham, which was one of the people who was trying to get this passed across the board, said this bill pays you more not to work than if you were working. And basically, this is just because you're getting $600 every week, basically, for a month to help you through this time period. My thought is, I don't care if you're paying people more than if they were working. We need people to have a means of survival. We need people to be able to feed their families, to be able to, at least in this time period where everything is just up in the air and nobody really knows what's going on, this will really help them out. But it was one of the things that really held up the whole discussion and passing of this bill. And then from there, we had about $350 billion in loans to small businesses. And basically, let me read a quick quote from the Wall Street Journal. The stimulus package included $350 billion in loans to small businesses in an effort to keep Americans on payroll as economic activity across the country comes to a standstill. Under the new program, loan money that small businesses use to cover payroll expenses, rent, interest on mortgage obligations, and utilities will be forgiven. The legislation would also provide billions in debt relief on existing loans, which is this is amazing. Like, basically, if you're a small business, and small business, I think, is classified by 100 employees or less, I believe is the number. I think medium-sized business is 500 or less, I think. I don't really know the designation. But anyway, if you're a small business and you have to take a loan to keep your employees, to continue to pay for your building, to continue to pay for utility bills or any of this stuff, basically you don't have to pay that stuff back to the government, which is really, really good. Basically, they will let it go if you use the money not for capital stuff, not to help yourself grow in any way, but just to keep the lights on, essentially, and just to keep making sure that you're paying people and you're keeping people hired and all that good stuff. Because a majority of people are hired by small businesses in the United States. Most people work for a small business in one capacity or the other. And so this is to help those, a large majority of the economy. And then from there, another part of the negotiation that really broke down and was like a huge part of like fight and bickering in the Senate of why this thing took so long to get passed was bailouts for different industries. There was different ways of how they wanted to go about bailing out industries. Some people didn't want to do it as strongly as it was passed, and some people wanted it to be stronger. But, that's what we have in a democratic system. But anyway, basically, a major challenge, I'm going to read another quote from the Wall Street Journal. A major challenge in the negotiations was $500 billion in corporate aid, much of which will go towards backstopping Federal Reserve loans. The Treasury Secretary will have the authority to directly lend a slice of these funds, and Democrats had sought to, you know what, forget it. We're not reading that. I'm going to cut this part out. Anyway, so $500 billion was supposed to go in corporate loans to help a lot of different companies, or help a lot of municipalities, and states that have been harmed. 61 billion was earmarked for loans and direct cash assistance to the airline industries. However, this came with strings attached to it. Strings like caps on executive pay and requirements that maintain payroll, which is really, really good. Another 17 billion was reserved for companies critical to national security, which basically was a way for them to be able to help companies that maybe should not necessarily fall into the range of being helped. We're talking about companies like Boeing, who had prior issues prior to the whole coronavirus situation. But however, Boeing is such a massive company that you can't do anything but help Boeing because it hires so many people. And then also it's a streamlined effect where Boeing has suppliers, and if Boeing goes out of business, those suppliers go out of business and all that kind of stuff. So the government is incentivized to help Boeing. So the main thing to think about that 500 billion, which a lot of people are upset about companies getting bailed out, but the main thing to think about is even though the companies are getting bailed out, all businesses that receive government loans are subject to restrictions like a ban on stock buybacks and the duration for the duration of the loan plus 1 year after they've taken that loan. So what does that mean? Basically, a business is not allowed to try and use this money as a leverage tool to try and make their business better. They have to pay back the loan for a lot of larger businesses. And at the same time, they're not allowed to give it a lot of their executive raises. They're not allowed to pay dividends to a degree, or they have to reduce the amount of dividends that they pay out. Because if you couldn't pay meet your regular payroll expenses, your regular expenditure, how are you going to be paying dividends to your shareholders during this time and using federal funds to be paying your shareholders? That doesn't make any sense. And it makes sense that they are limiting how much of that can happen. But the big news in that whole thing is that it's going to last for a year afterwards, which is why a lot of companies have to really think about if they want to take some of these loans from the government or if they just want to leave it and just try and suffer their way through this time period and then make it up on the other side. And so that's one of the decisions that a lot of large corporations has to make is, are we going to take this bailout from the government and then not do dividends or not pay out dividends later on or do stock buybacks later on? Or are we just going to swallow this pill and just try to survive on our own with the cash reserves that we currently have? And then the last part of the bill that was pretty interesting and pretty good is it also gave about $100 billion to healthcare providers to try and stockpile on medical equipment and try and get as much protections for all those who will be going to the hospitals and those kind of things. So that's just the overall breakdown of how that $2 trillion came into being and how every single thing within that $2 trillion goes to helping the economy as a whole, to helping individuals, but not just individuals, but also helping corporations survive through this time period. And when I say corporations, I'm thinking more of the small businesses who are the ones who really need this money during this time period. But I'm also lying because large businesses also need the money, because what this whole situation has revealed is just how much every single person in the United States of America is under debt. Not just individuals, but even companies as a whole. Like companies who couldn't even survive for a day, for like literally a month. They didn't have anything in their cash flow to be able to survive during this time period because everybody's in debt right now. Every business is under debt right now. So just something to think about. Anyway, moving on from there, I just want to make a quick note because I just found this interesting. We talked about how the president was talking about how, we'll be back. Everything will be normal when we come back get out. Everything will be normal when we come back by Easter. Well, he's changed his tune a good bit. And I'm going to quote him right here. After a number was shown to him that the death toll could be up to 2 million people who died from this situation if we do nothing, President Trump finally decided that he needed to extend the social distancing criteria and guidelines until April 30th so we can have this thing continue to be contained, because this thing can get a whole lot better and it's supposed to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. Or this thing can get a whole lot worse before it gets better. And so we're hoping we don't get up to this number of 100. Dr. Anthony Fauci is saying that maybe close to 100,000 people might die from the virus. I pray we do not get anywhere close to that number, but currently we are sitting at about 3,000 people who have already died from this thing. And part of the problem is we just don't have enough tests. We don't have enough ventilators. We don't have enough masks. We just don't have enough of anything to go around to help people out. So it's an unfortunate situation. But the good thing is we have a lot of private industries that are finally jumping in and trying to help out in different ways. Whether it's Tesla trying to make ventilators, or Ford trying to make ventilators, or GM trying to make ventilators, or all the other small fabric businesses that are trying to make masks, or even distilleries that are trying to make hand sanitizers and those kind of things. So we're seeing a mountain of the private industry to where everyone is showing up and saying, we will try and help during this time. We will try and do what we can do to help the public as a whole. And so that's good to see. But however, unfortunately, at the same time, it's just coming at a late time. Like, it's just a lot of late information. But as long as we can get it fixed, and I pray that we get it fixed, not fixed, but we can get this thing situated and everything kind of come all the way to the end. But anyway, moving on from there, we got the other thing. We were talking about the unemployment claims. I just wanted to show y'all this chart if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, I just want to show you like just how explosive the amount of people who just filed for unemployment. And it's expected to be higher, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But even during times of just extreme recession, when we've gone through recession, the maximum number of unemployment has only hit what was the maximum in all time history? The most ever is 695,000 people in 1982. That's the most that we've ever hit in history, in the history of everything. And so just thinking about that, of where we are now with about 3.3 million people, and the number is expected to explode today when you guys are listening to this. It's expected to grow even more when unemployment claims are announced again. And so it's just really, really unfortunate. And think about it, just last month and the month before, we're talking about how the US had added new jobs for 113 straight months, which is about 9 years straight. The US had continually added new jobs and continued adding jobs. And so now to see it swing so viciously on the other side, it's just crazy to see, man. It's really, really crazy to see how everything has changed. And then to make matters worse, the Fed, we're going to ignore that. The Fed just came out with a research that they put together and said that the number is going to hit about 47 million people who are going to register for unemployment. 47 million. Just a quote from the Fed of why they came up and how they came up with that number. They break it down into 3 categories. They say there are high-risk occupations that they see that will cause people to lose their jobs. And I'm going to read a quote directly from their research paper. They said, in a recent blog post, Charles Gaston used 2018 occupational data from the BLS to estimate how many employees are at high risk of layoffs due to social distancing measures. Gaston classified 808 occupations according to 3 criteria. The first criteria is whether those occupations are essential to public health or safety. The second is whether they involve work that can be completed off-site. So you know what we're doing, working from home. And then the third is whether they are salaried or not. And then from there, he estimated that 66.8 million people are employed in occupations that are at high risk of layoff. These include occupations in sales, production, food preparation, and services, among others. And then from there, another study was done by Matthew Famiglietti and a few other people. And basically, they found that 27.3 million workers have occupations with a high contact intensities, which means these include barbers, hairstylists, food and beverage serving workers, and flight attendants. And then from there, they said that they basically just took an average of those 2 numbers and came up with 47 million people that can be laid off during this time period, giving us an unemployment number of about 32%. 32%. And when the Fed comes out and says anything, it's not like a news article that you read where they like just quote something and just say, oh my gosh, unemployment is going to be crazy. This is actually like the Fed does not do hyperbole. The Fed does not come out and exaggerate. The Fed does research, and then from that research, they come up with a number, and then this is the number that they are giving us. They're saying that in the second quarter of this year, we might see unemployment go all the way up to 32%. Now, this is not to scare anybody. This is not to put fear in anybody or anything like that, but it's just to show y'all how serious this issue is, and just to show y'all just how much this thing can get out of hand, unfortunately. And I just pray that it gets a whole lot better before it gets worse. But anyway, a couple of things that I wanted to share with y'all because I found it very, very interesting. One news article I read today or read recently talked about how people are now buying a whole lot more tops than they are pants. Which makes sense because everybody is working from home. So everybody looks professional from the waist up, but it's a party from the waist down. You know, everybody's just buying a whole lot more tops than they are down. Walmart is announcing that they've seen an increase in the number of tops people are buying and a decrease in the number of pants that are being bought. Gap is announcing the same thing. Old Navy is announcing the same thing. I just thought this was very interesting about the way that working from home has changed the industry. And it's just, I just found the article interesting, really. And then, of course, we have the Waffle House Index. Too bad that the Washington Post wants me to pay for a subscription, but I ain't gonna do it. But anyway, we talked about this on Tuesday, so I'm not gonna really rehash it. I just found it interesting that Waffle House is so important when businesses look at different things. And then I read this article on my phone where it didn't do this nonsense about accepting a cookie, but on my phone about the ozone layer and how it's healing itself due to us not driving around and due to just pollution being at all-time lows because we're not going everywhere and all that stuff. So it was just an interesting article about how without humans moving all around, all about this place, we're actually doing better overall. But anyway, that's all I have for y'all today. Let's do a quick recap. First of all, we talked about just where we've come from, where we were at sitting at super highs, and now we're where we are now just in the span of 90 days where we hit the all-time peak, the highest peak of all time when it comes to the stock market just in February. And then in March, we had a $2.2 trillion stimulus package that was announced and about 3.3 million people filing for unemployment. And then we talked about the $2.2 trillion stimulus package that is out there to help from the individual to corporations, and how we broke down how each and every single one of the different parts of that helps in different areas, and how that can actually work out to be like a double whammy. If you file for unemployment, you can get $600 per week, plus you get that one-time payment of about $1,200 if you make less than $75,000. So we talked about that. We talked about just the Fed and how they're expecting unemployment to be even worse than it is right now. And I'm not saying that to scare anybody. I'm just saying that for us to continue praying and continue focusing, because it might be a while before we come out of this. But stay focused, keep on your journey. For all those who are trying to invest in one thing or the other, it's still a good time to buy a few stocks. But make sure that you have, this thing locked me out. But make sure that you have your finances in order before you start doing any of these kind of investments or anything like that. Because as we just talked about, it's better to be liquid and have money in your bank account than for you to try and start investing in all these different things. But anyway, it's been your boy Kelechi, and I'm going to talk to y'all later. Stay strong. Keep your hope up. It will get better. This will pass. And keep washing your hands, folks. God bless y'all. Peace.